Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about The 10 Types of Human by Dexter Dias, a book I've just finished reading as Storm Eunice is raging outside. So out of all the books that I've read recently, this one is without a doubt one of my favorites. It has everything that I love reading about: anthropology, psychology, history, neuroscience, but more than that, what it has is stories. I just couldn't and wouldn't put it down. So to be honest, I think the title of the book doesn't do it justice. Upon reading it for the first time, I thought it was one of those Myers-Briggs personality type books, you know, the 10 kinds of people you're gonna date in your 20s. But the book is far from being that. It's more about different neural circuits we all have that we've evolved and developed over millennia. We all share as human beings, and where they come from, what their function is, and how we can all employ and express them in certain circumstances. Despite the somewhat silly title, what caught my attention in the beginning was its sheer size, clocking in at about 800 pages. And what tends to draw me towards these books is that it signals to me that the author has put in the effort. They had something to say and they took the proper time to say it. It's not just one of those 200-page brochures that you write over the summer. If I'm going to pay for a book, I want to get my money's worth. I then Googled the book, which I always do when I'm about to buy one, and the consensus seemed to be positive. Now, I didn't read any review in detail, so I didn't really know what to expect. Dexter Dias is a British barrister and human rights lawyer, and he has extensive experience in working with victims and survivors of abuse and exploitation. And most of the book is drawing from his travels and experience in talking to these people from all walks of life. I had never heard of Dias before. I hadn't read anything written by him, but I was pleasantly surprised. I think he's a good writer. Now, I mentioned that the book contains stories, but these aren't just any stories. I mean, these are stories from people from the fringes of human experience. And if you are going to read the book, I want you to have a fresh of an experience as possible, but I do want to give you an idea of the kinds of stories that Dias tells, just to whet your appetite. So in each chapter, the author starts by telling an anecdote or setting up a thought experiment to prove a point. Then he might mention research or discussions or interviews with scientists working on that particular topic. And then he goes on and tells these stories that I've mentioned. And if the book were to have a weak point, I would say it's this jumping back and forth between the different trains of thought. That can become a bit tiresome, but that's sort of a minor point. So the book opens with a story about child slavery, and it really sets the tone for the rest of the book. This particular story is about Anthony, a boy in Ghana who gets sold in slavery by his parents, which apparently still happens very often in certain countries, because the parents feel like they don't have the means to raise their children properly. And these traffickers will promise the parents that the kids will receive food and shelter and education. And the parents very often feel like they have no other choice. Of course, the kids turn out not to receive any of that, but are instead forced to do these extremely dangerous jobs. In Anthony's case, he's forced to fish on Lake Volta, and Dias tells the story of him and one of his best friends who actually dies on one of these fishing trips, and subsequently the story of Anthony's escape. So the book covers a whole panoply of human suffering. There's a chapter on victims of stroke that end up having locked-in syndrome. There's a chapter about Haiti, the 2010 earthquake, but also its history of sharing a border with the Dominican Republic. There's a chapter about female genital mutilation, which is still a thing for millions of girls worldwide. But by far my two favorite chapters were about the Central African Republic and the other one about Russia and Kazakhstan. And I'm not going to comment on whether I cried reading them, but I will say it was very awkward reading these in Starbucks next to a bunch of teenagers that were watching TikTok dances. So yes, 10 Types of Human by Dexter Dias. This is a full recommendation. Go check it out and see you next week.